Thank you for having me. One of the areas in philosophy that is pretty standard for the discipline is social and political philosophy. We argue about the rights and wrongs of laws and social and political arrangements. We have opinions, but we try and back those opinions up with reasoned arguments. It's pretty standard. It's what we try to do. So in my writing, I'm clear, personally, that I completely support the rights of trans people to live their lives without violence, harm, or discrimination. And I mean it. I'm also keen to distinguish personally between trans activists and trans people. As far as I'm concerned, trans activists, the people I have in mind, are the organisations that are rich, well-connected, powerful, and they have a very simplified core political message. The message is trans women are women, that we've heard. It's a mantra that applies in all possible contexts, apparently, and they promote self-ID. And it is important to note that not all trans people agree with these organisations. Trans people are a very diverse group, as is every group of human beings. One focus in my writing is on possible conflicts of interest between two groups. On the one hand, biological females, and on the other hand, self-identifying trans women. Now, conflicts of interest between groups happen as a standard feature of political life. You might find them between religious groups and secular groups, and philosophers talk about them all the time. What happens is, in a conflict of interest, if you give one group something, you take away something important from the other. And I believe that there are some important conflicts of interest here. Trans activists would have you believe that there is absolutely no conflicts of interest here whatsoever. There are no consequences for biological females if we go along with the ideology that they promote, and I disagree. So I think that there are some permissions, protections, resources that if we give them to self-identifying trans women, we will take something away from biological women, and even worse, it will be taking away something that's already in short supply because of a sexist society. If same-sex spaces for females, where they undress or where they sleep, are removed or reduced, as is starting to happen, this potentially reduces the safety of females from sexual violence. Take political representation for females, which is already in short supply because we live in a sexist society. If we then give some of that political representation to trans women via all-women shortlists that were originally designed to mitigate against sexism, then this reduces the already limited opportunities for political representation for females. So you can make that sort of point with respect to female sport, media representation. There's a range of areas you could argue that. If trans women are literally women, not just legally, but in every possible context, and even more so if self-identifying trans women are literally women in every possible context, then that does nothing less than force society into a complete re-understanding of what it is to be a woman. And obviously that has an impact on the biological females who were already occupying that category. So it's perfectly okay for us to talk about that because it has an impact on our lives. Okay. I want to describe a problem which partly explains why the things I've just described are not getting properly discussed. And that's the relative silence of academics in universities. They're there and they wish to be critical of these narratives that are put forward by trans activists, but they are self-silencing or silenced. And to give you a sense of how the silencing happens, I'll tell you briefly about some of the responses that I've had to the stuff that I've been writing. So these responses have taken a couple of forms. One is aggressive, angry public responses from fellow academics. For instance, saying, I'm causing harm and even violence to trans people by my writing. Despite the fact that I constantly reaffirm that I think that trans people should be free from violence and harm. I'm causing it directly. I'm told that I'm trying to whip up a moral panic about trans women, despite my repeatedly saying that I am not saying they're a particularly dangerous group. I'm saying they are biologically male, and there are patterns of male violence that we know exist. I'm told that I'm debating the existence of trans people. I'm not debating that. I know they exist. I'm talking about the law, and that's different. I'm criticised all the time for not being kind or inclusive. Despite the fact those are obviously gendered stereotypes, I'm supposed to care that I'm not kind because I'm a woman. No one tries that shit on men. So, and I'm told I'm playing intellectual games with people's lives, This is not a fun game for me. I'm doing this because I think it matters. I'm not a psychopath. Right, so the aim is to make me feel ashamed. It hasn't worked. I feel no shame whatsoever in anything I have written. I believe what I've done is important, and even if I'm wrong, I'm absolutely convinced I should have the right to say it without being personally attacked. I think we need analysis, observation, and free discussion without this kind of fear. Now, philosophy trades in conceptual distinctions and clarifications, and it would be of enormous help to the public conversation if we could distinguish between a human right and a way of realizing that right. It is not a human right of a trans woman to enter a space set up to protect females. It's a human right of trans women to be free of violence, and this proposed solution to that right is to get them into female-only spaces. But there's plenty of other ways we could realise that right. Philosophy can also help us understand the difference between what's called deliberately misgendering someone and talking about biological and political reality. There has to be a context in which we can permissibly talk about female bodies, experiences, without it being an insult to somebody listening. If we don't have the language to describe the differences between females and trans women, we can't name our own bodies, we can't name our own oppression. Philosophy can also help us examine what a lesbian is. Can the category of lesbians include a pre-operative male trans woman with a penis who exclusively fancies females? Trans activists say yes. Many lesbians, including myself, say no. That's not because I'm being mean or unkind. It's because we need a category for homosexual orientation between females. It does political and conceptual work, and if we got rid of it, we'd just have to reinvent it because it's still a thing. Okay, so why should academics with expertise talk out about this? I can think of 3 reasons, and I'll finish with those. The first is, rather boringly, facts matter, and should matter to academics above all. The truth matters, and if most of the academics who have expertise in this debate are not talking and are frightened to talk, then we just get a one-sided narrative, and we also get wild, inaccurate, confused claims and theories, and no one's there to correct them. And that's already hurting females, and it will possibly even end up hurting trans people. Many trans people are alarmed about the way the dominant discourse is going because they fear a backlash for them. The second reason academics need to speak up is we need to set an example. Many young people today, not just students, but kids and teens, are online, and they are living in a climate of suffocation. They cannot say what they think. They are terrified of saying the wrong thing, being dogpiled or whatever the word is. They feel stifled, they feel frightened, and they're even more susceptible to social shaming than adults are. So herding and groupthink is developing online, and if academics don't try and show the world what a measured, balanced, sane discussion looks like, and how we can deal with disagreement, like it's okay to disagree, we just don't have to go apeshit about it, then we're failing those young people. And the final reason academics need to speak out is this climate of fear is allowing fascistic tendencies to develop in society. The reception of a woman's place so far, the harassment of venues and ticket sellers, the bomb threats, the threats on social media, the sometimes violent protests, my email was hacked today, should not be happening in a free and democratic society. Females coming together to discuss the law and how it affects them are being frightened off. And academics are supposed to be a key part of civil society in a supposedly democratic country, and quite frankly, they need to woman up.